lose their intensity and we'll continue to see some clear spells. Cloud thickening though during the early hours across the far southwest as that next weather system approaches. Under the clearer skies it will turn quite chilly once again to start Friday morning. Temperatures low single figures, perhaps a touch of grass frost for 1 or 2. As we go through the day on Friday, we'll see southern parts of the UK turning increasingly cloudy. We'll see some showery outbreakers of rain pushing east. Brighter further north, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, seeing a mixture of sunny spells and showers. Showers not quite as heavy as recent days and temperatures a little higher. But the good news is, into the weekend, it should become largely dry and the temperatures starting to rise.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one.
Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like
Absolutely.
on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
from 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today. Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
As President Biden makes a very cursory visit to the United Kingdom, we'll ask, does the special relationship really exist? We'll have a look at Prince Harry. Yes, he's coming, but Meghan's not, to the coronation in just a few weeks' time. A partial win, a little win, a first hurdle for those against ULEZ extension. I'll also be talking to a campaigner who wants to disrupt my day at the Grand National this Saturday. I'll attempt to find out why. But before all of that, let's get the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you, and good evening to you. The top story tonight on GB News. The United States President has toured Carlingford Castle in County Louth as part of his 3-day visit to the Republic of Ireland today. Crowds of well-wishers braved the rainy weather to watch his motorcade arrive. Mr Biden's grandfather, James Finnegan, was born in the county. Earlier, President Biden spoke at Ulster University in Northern Ireland, where he highlighted the significance of the Good Friday Agreement, praising at the same time the Windsor Framework, saying it addressed the practical realities of Brexit.
Sometimes, especially when the distance of history, we forget how hard-earned, how astounding that peace was at the moment. It shifted the political gravity in our world. There were no guarantees that the deal on paper would hold. No guarantees that it would be able to deliver the progress we celebrate today. It took long, hard years of work to get to this place. It took a people willing to come together in good faith and to risk boldly for the future.
Joe Biden. Now, the Scottish Government is planning to launch a legal challenge against Westminster's decision to veto new gender recognition reforms. Scotland's Social Justice Secretary says the bill was passed by an overwhelming majority in Holyrood with support from all parties. Shirley-Ann Somerville warned the British government's use of Section 35 risked setting a dangerous constitutional precedent of what she said were devolved matters. Well, Rishi Sunak has defended the move, saying he has concerns over its impact on women's safety. Now, the BMA has formally asked the government to enter talks facilitated by the conciliation service ACAS to help end the junior doctors' pay dispute. It comes after thousands of junior doctors in England walked out for the second of 4 days of industrial action. Downing Street have refused to negotiate unless the British Medical Association abandons demands for a 35% pay rise. The former BBC Radio 1 DJ Tim Westwood has been interviewed twice under caution for 5 alleged sex offences between 1982 and 2016. The Metropolitan Police saying it interviewed a 65-year-old man on March the 15th and April 4th this year. There has been no arrest, but last year a statement from the representative of Tim Westwood said he had strongly denied all the allegations. Now, heavy rain and 70-mile-an-hour gusts are forecast this evening as Storm Noah barrels into the UK. The Met Office saying there's a chance of heavy outbreaks of rain and thunderstorms, particularly across the southeast of England this evening. Forecasters are also saying short-term power cuts are likely, as well as possible travel disruption. That's the all-important weather. Now, here's Nigel.
We've been debating this for decades, and particularly ever since 1956 and Suez, when many felt America had done us a bad turn despite having stood next to each other in 2 world wars. Does the special relationship exist? It goes on, and it is actually a very important and a very fundamental question. Critics will say that it's way too one-sided in America's favour, and they'll cite extradition treaties, and they might just, on that, have a point. But I would always argue that in terms of NATO, I would always argue that in terms of investment and trade and culturally, I think we're closer, actually, than we've ever been at any point in our histories. So I think the special relationship does exist, but it has good times and bad times, and that depends very much, it seems to me, on who the US president of the day is. Now, Joe Biden, famously in support of many Irish nationalist causes, not a fan of the colour orange, once sort of brushed away a BBC interviewer when he was asked a question with a simple, very rude, "I'm Irish," sort of "please go away," I think is what he meant. But to be fair to Joe Biden, today I thought the speech that he gave in Belfast was very, very careful. He was doing his best not to be provocative in any way. That doesn't stop the DUP and others from saying he's anti-British. Some have even said that he hates Britain. Well, I think hate probably is rather too strong a word. But what do you think? Do you think the special relationship exists, and does it matter? Let me know what you think. Farage@gbnews.uk. Well, let's go straight to Belfast and join Darren McCaffrey, GB News' political editor. Darren, I felt Biden was doing his absolute best not to be offensive to anybody in that speech today, and I thought he probably carried it off.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. You could portray this visit, Nigel, as somewhat of a failure. First of all, President Biden didn't spend very much time hearing facts. He was here for about 18 hours, and I think he spent the majority of that in beds. Also, we know, you look at the streets of Belfast today, this was not a Bill Clinton moment in 1995. There were thousands, but not many of them, on the streets of Belfast to welcome President Biden today, but no real sense of enthusiasm. And then you're right in pointing out the DUP, Jeffrey Donaldson this afternoon saying that this visit had not changed the political weather here. The dynamics of politics had not changed because of this Biden visit. However, let's flip it around the other way. Let's look at what President Biden had to say. I felt he threaded a very careful line today between talking about the need for power sharing, the need for compromise, looking back at the hard-won victories of the Good Friday Agreement 25 years on, while at the same time a kind of recognition that he needs to listen to unionism. He did say today that he was here to listen. He met briefly with the political leaders. Added to that a real effort during that speech to talk about his British heritage as much as his Irish heritage, and also that carrot that he kind of dangled in front of unionism to say, you know what, I'm not going to force you to get the executive back up again. He said that was your judgment to make, but if you do, there could be billions of dollars of investment for Northern Ireland. And also, I think a visit that Downing Street will be happy with, Nigel, and that's because, again, Rishi Sunak got to meet with President Biden for 45 minutes this morning. It's the third time they've met since he became Prime Minister. Now, nothing substantive came out of that, but Downing Street are making a really concerted effort to try and mend some of the broken relationships with the White House over the last couple of years. We'll have to see how that progresses over time, but there will be pleased, of course, that he did bring up the Windsor framework. So all in all, I think not necessarily a bad visit, but you're right in suggesting that actually the majority of what President Biden's come to Ireland to do will be what happens over the next couple of days down in Dublin, rather than up here in Belfast.
Yeah, it was a very cursory visit, and he lived up to his name of Sleepy Joe, as you say, by spending more time in bed than he actually spent out on engagements. But he was really very strongly in support of the Windsor framework, something that just isn't going to work with the DUP. Sunak, of course, thrilled, almost fawning, I thought, over the American president. But in summation, Darren, as far as the UK is concerned, what did this trip actually achieve?
Largely not very much. You're right in saying the Prime Minister has gone to extraordinary lengths. I mean, I don't think he needed to turn up last night to greet President Biden off Air Force One. But all in all, it is interesting today when the White House were pushed on this idea, mooted by Arlene Foster actually on GB News last night, that somehow President Biden hates Britain. The White House were pretty firm in trying to bat that away, saying that that was simply untrue. They talked about the G7, they talked about NATO, they talked about the UN Security Council. And I do think on a personal level, Nigel, and we know, I don't think this was true of Boris Johnson or Liz Truss. I think on a personal level, Joe Biden and Rishi Sunak, it's a bit awkward, but I think they do actually get on. And we know that while he's not going to go to the coronation, there is going to be a state visit for Joe Biden at some point before the end of his presidency, and also that Rishi Sunak has been invited to the White House in June. So it is a work in progress, but all in all, as I say, I think Downing Street and the White House will be pleased with this visit. The big question is, will anything change in a couple of months with the DUP and the restoration installment? That will be the real test of whether this has actually managed to change the political weather here.
Darren McCaffrey, thank you very much indeed. And how wonderfully political. Both sides absolutely delighted, but nothing achieved at all. Let's talk big picture. This really big picture Biden's visit gives us, I think, the hook. Talk about these things. I'm joined by Mitchell Rees, former special envoy to the Northern Ireland peace process under President Bush, with the rank of ambassador, and now partner in Brunswick Group, geopolitics being your game. Now, let's talk defence to begin with. Since 1917, in almost every major conflict, we've been pretty much side by side. The withdrawal from Afghanistan by President Biden, without even referring to the Brits, made many of us doubt whether that military and intelligence relationship would go on. It seems to have recovered since that moment.
Well, I don't think the retreat from Afghanistan was the administration's finest moment, and I think they would probably agree with that. But the underlying military-to-military relationship and the intelligence sharing is unprecedented.
Yeah.
So it's not just Five Eyes, it's what we do bilaterally all over the world. That is at the heart of the special relationship, which I believe continues.
Just to pick up on that point, so you're saying that the bilateral sharing of information between the two of us is actually far more important overall than Five Eyes?
I don't want to compare the two. I just think that it's a special relationship built up over years, mutual respect, mutual sharing, that again is unprecedented. We have this with no other country in the world. It is, I think, a fact that's widely accepted in Washington that we have no better ally than Great Britain anywhere around the world.
Well, if that's the case, let's talk about trade. Now, Biden was dangling a carrot, saying, all go back into Stormont, get power sharing back on the agenda, and billions more dollars of investment could come to Northern Ireland. But, I was talking to the Trump administration about a trade deal being struck between the two countries. The Republicans were very excited about it. They thought, hey, with Brexit, there was all sorts, and we did get one or two concessions on whiskey, etc. But there's no discussion on this trip from Joe Biden about a trade deal. And in fact, we're told negotiations may not even start till 2027. So if the relationship is that good, why is it this American administration has backed off?
Well, I think that it is a bipartisan decision that trade deals are simply not going to happen. It's not just up to the executive branch. Congress has to play along with it.
Yeah.
And so, again, I don't think that I would use that as a litmus test in terms of the nature of the relationship. I did think that what the president was saying today about Northern Ireland and foreign direct investment does change the dynamic. I think Sir Geoffrey may have been a little premature in saying that it wasn't changed, because holding out the idea of thousands of good, well-paying jobs in Northern Ireland has to be attractive, and corporate America is not going to make that investment if Stormont isn't up and running.
No, but of course the problem is that Brexit has cut Northern Ireland off from the rest of the United Kingdom in many ways, and we could debate the extent of that. But I want to get back to this trade deal, because, you see, it's an extraordinary thing. America is the biggest single foreign investor in the United Kingdom, and we are still, remarkably, the biggest foreign investor in the United States of America. I mean, that is a fact. So surely it would be logical to move sector by sector towards building a trade deal, the most obvious one, of course, being in financial services, where there are, and I worked in financial services for American companies for 20 years, and there are some ridiculous little barriers to trade. Why can't we move forward? And somehow it seems all the way through that what has stopped Joe Biden doing this, and Pelosi was very outspoken on it too, was this whole business of, the Northern Irish Protocol. You're suggesting to me that if they go back to Stormont, we could move even further.
Well, I think that's true. I think the Windsor Framework does address a lot of the concerns that the Union has had in Northern Ireland. Again, building a constituency for free trade agreements is a challenge in the United States on a bipartisan basis. So it's not just the Biden administration. No. There were voices that did not want to do this in the Trump administration. There was a free trade agreement that the United States, in my view, should be joining in the Pacific region that would shore up our position vis-a-vis China. It's completely logical from a strategic point of view, but yet it doesn't have the constituency yet in order to make that happen. So, again, free trade in theory is a good thing. The politics in America are right now a little tricky.
Yeah, and agriculture, of course, always being very, very difficult to negotiate anywhere around the world.
Of course.
So, let's sum this up, shall we? Mitchell, I would say that the special relationship, and I'm with you, I think it does exist and it's real. It's been a little cool for the last couple of years, but we're still best friends, yeah?
Absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely.
On that note, I'll say thank you very much indeed for joining us. Prince Harry is to attend the coronation on May the 6th. Gosh, he kept everybody waiting. But Meghan Markle is not going to be there. Is this the right decision? We'll discuss all of that with Tom Bauer, Harry's biographer, in just a moment.
It's all about family. Being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today. Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, your thoughts on whether the special relationship exists. One viewer says it all depends who the president is and who the prime minister is. Thatcher and Reagan did good. Well, they had a remarkably close relationship. Andrew says not under Biden. Well, Andrew, I think our relationship has been in a deep freeze. Maybe it's only in the fridge. After today, given that the prime minister and the US president do, as Darren said, appear to get on pretty well. There's going to be a state visit for Biden here. Rishi Sunak's off to the White House. Doesn't mean things are perfect, but maybe they are a little better than they were a few months ago. Dave says, not when the Democrats are in power. It isn't. Dave, it's also fair to point out that there is, even within the Republicans, a wing that is very, very isolationist. Richard says it probably did whilst we were an EU member. Historically, this was the case. Now I think Ireland is rapidly fulfilling this position. Well, Richard, that is a very interesting one. It is true, if you go back to the early 60s, that the American administrations did want us to join the EEC. They absolutely did. And they wanted a strong Europe. Why? Well, quite simply because they had 500,000 men at arms in Europe to try and maintain the peace with the Warsaw Pact. They thought it was a way of reducing their commitment. But actually, being outside the European Union, I think makes us an even more valuable and powerful bridge between EU states and America, especially when it comes to defence, and many other areas too. So finally, the news is out. Prince Harry will, on May the 6th, be attending the coronation, but his wife, Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, will not be there. Now, we're told the main reason is that May the 6th is little Archie's 4th birthday. I'm going to be joined right now by Tom Bower, author of Rebel Prince, Down the Line. Tom, none of us are privy to the negotiations that have gone on behind the scenes and whether they were arguing about where they were going to sit or whether they were going to be on the balcony. But I guess in the end, it probably is the right thing, is it not, that Harry attends his father's coronation?
Well, I think it's an ugly compromise. I think that we must all be grateful that Kate, in the end, I think, prevented Meghan coming and said she wouldn't have her there under any circumstances. And if she did come, she had to sit at the back. But I do think that for the royal family, Harry's presence is constitutionally important. After all, if, God forbid, something happened to the Cambridges and all of them died, we'd have King Harry on the throne after Charles. So he's got to be there. The question is what his role will be when he gets to London. And I think that the arguments over the last few days have been very much to minimise his presence in the Abbey.
Right, so that will, of course, a lot of that will depend where they seat him, etc. But the other, of course, the other big moment, whether it's a coronation or a major national event, are those scenes on the balcony at Buckingham Palace with the crowds below. And we've been told in the run-up to this that the two of them would not be on the balcony because they weren't working royals. I wonder whether Meghan not being there makes it a bit easier for Harry to appear with the rest of his family on that balcony.
Well, in theory, yes, but I think in practice it would be terrible if Charles did that, because I think if he let Harry come on the balcony, he'd also have to have Prince Andrew on the balcony. And to have two renegade princes in front of the public like that would be a very bad start to King Charles's reign. I think the coronation in the end is all about Charles. What sort of king is he going to be? Will he be accepted? Will he be popular? Will he make an impression that there's an age of King Charles III? And the squabbling about these two princes is not a good way to start your reign, let alone the coronation itself. So I think the most important thing is for Harry to be there, probably, from Charles's point of view, but to be as invisible as possible.
OK. And just a final thought, Tom, if I may. The King, under pressure from The Guardian, has agreed to open up the historical documents to see what linkages there may have been going back centuries with the slave trade. Is he in danger of trying to please those in society who don't support the monarchy anyway and leave his natural supporters scratching their heads and wondering why he's doing it?
Well, I think he had no choice but to do it because he couldn't say, I will not find out what happened 300 years ago. I think the consequences of what he discovers is the really important issue, and reparations is an absolute no-no. And I don't think that Charles in any way will want to go down the path The Guardian has gone, which is to rewrite history and pretend that somehow what happened 300 years ago applies to us today. So I think politically, he had to say, yes, have a look. But practically, the result will be, well, so what? We're not going to take any notice today what happened all that long time ago. We're not going to become woke and follow all the dreadful Guardianistas in the world. We'll stand up against them.
Well, Tom Bower, always a pleasure to have you on the programme, and I absolutely hope you're right about that last point. I really, truly do. Thank you, Tom. In a moment, we'll have a look at what happened in the English Channel on Easter Sunday, and all of this following a promise to give the French a further £480 million. All of that in a moment. Stick with us. GB News, the People's Channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
It was Easter Sunday, and we'd expected, because the seas were dead flat, that there'd be a lot of migrant boats crossing the channel. As it turned out, there were perhaps fewer than we'd anticipated, and the reason for that was there was some really pretty thick banks of fog in the English Channel. But the French Navy, well, they were up to their old tricks, of course, escorting dinghies across the Channel, even if they were only a couple of hundred yards off the beach. This message was sent from the French Navy to a British ferry. Listen to this.
Morning, sir. I am currently ahead of you for 3 nautical miles and conducting a SAR operation with 2 small craft and BF Typhoon. Is it possible for you to take a wide berth on your port side?
Unfortunately, due to the traffic, we cannot alter course towards the vessel in restricted visibility, so we will alter course to starboard.
Okay, so thank you for your cooperation. Switching channel 16, over.
Well, that story was run, and those pictures you saw, by Special Investigations Editor of the Daily Mail, Sue Reed, somebody who spent as much, if not more time than me on this whole cross-channel issue. Sue, I mean, clearly conditions were quite dangerous in the Channel, and you heard that from the captain of the P&O ferry. But isn't it a bit galling, given that the deal that our Prime Minister, whose big pledge, of course, is to stop the boats,
Yes.
and tell me if I'm wrong, but as I see it, he's given them, promised them yet another £480 million, And yet the French Navy are still escorting boats over to a 12-mile line and then literally handing them over to Border Force.
And ordering our ferry, the P&O ferry, bringing British holidaymakers to France, ordering it out of the ferry lane. So it's ordering it to make a dangerous manoeuvre, as the captain or the officer on board the ferry intimated. Later on in the tape, she's saying, "Will you go to port?" And he said, "No, I can't go to port. I have to go to starboard." So almost everything, I have to say, that the officer on the French warship said was wrong. In terms of the instruction she was giving, which made it even more dangerous. So there was I got 2 calls almost instantly on Sunday morning from out in the Channel, and they said, "What is happening here is highly dangerous. Literally, the shipping lane, the busiest shipping lane in the world, ships are having to move out of the way. They're calling the Coast Guard, saying what is happening is this ferry has to make this manoeuvre on the orders of the French warship, which is going to meet Border Force to hand over 90 migrants."
But it's £480 million on top of £200 million we've given, a little bit more than that actually, already. What's it for?
Well, I cannot imagine how you can negotiate this without making it part of the deal, is to stop ferrying, escorting them over to us. I mean, surely the French must have a search and rescue service just like us.
They do. They do. They have the equivalent of the RNLI in France, that's true.
So why aren't these migrants, when they're setting off, taken on board their equivalent and taken back? I have seen it happen. I have seen a warship come into Calais at 7 in the morning, just outside my hotel window, and put migrants back onto the Calais shore. So it is possible to do it.
The irony is, if you were a private boat owner and you wanted to go out from Boulogne Harbour and go fishing for the day or go out with the family for the day, you have to pass very rigorous tests, and if you haven't got them, you get fined heavily. Yet, if you're in a dinghy...
Yeah, you're meant to, I mean, this has been put to me and put to Priti Patel, the former Home Secretary, by a very good former Coast Guard harbour master expert in Kent. He wrote to me, I passed the letter to Priti Patel, he said if they had to follow their own very strict maritime rules on the migrant boats, not one migrant boat would be allowed to set off.
Stricter rules than we have. Final thoughts, Sue. You know, the Prime Minister's made big pledges and promises. Suella Braverman, the newer Home Secretary. This isn't going to stop, is it?
I'm afraid it isn't. And what is so terribly concerning is the security. We have no idea who is coming in. I, in this programme before, said they're rogues and vagabonds. I was being incredibly polite. We are talking about potential terrorists. And we are, in Lithuania, when the migrants coming from Belarus, they found 0.5% were directly linked to ISIS. Now, why should it be any different with us?
Well, it won't
it would mean 750 people out of the 143,000 we are harbouring.
So we're making a terrible mistake. Keep up the good work. Thank you for coming on GB News again. Now, the What the Farage moment. Oh, I love this. You see, the BBC sent along a young reporter called James Clayton to interview Elon Musk, because Musk had said that Twitter would be defined as being government-funded hereafter. The reporter said to Musk, there's too much hate speech now appearing on Twitter's platform. This is what Elon Musk had to say.
Look, people will say all sorts of nonsense. I'm literally asking for a single example, and you can't name one.
Right, and as I've already said, I don't use that feed. But
then how would you know?
I don't think this is getting anywhere.
You literally said you experienced more hateful content, and then couldn't name a single example.
Right, and as I said,
that's absurd.
I haven't actually looked at that feed.
Then how would you know this hateful content?
Because I'm saying that's what I saw a few weeks ago. I can't give you an exact example. Let's move on. We only...
Well, I enjoyed that, but this is even better. This is Musk asking the BBC about their policy with regard to COVID and masks. This really is magic.
Does the BBC hold itself at all responsible for
misinformation regarding masking and side effects of vaccinations, and not reporting on that at all? And what about the fact that the BBC was put under pressure by the British government to change its editorial policy? Are you aware of that?
This is not an interview about the BBC.
Oh, you thought it wasn't?
And I see now why you've done Twitter Spaces. I am not a representative of the BBC's editorial policy. I want to make that clear. Let's talk about something else. You want to talk about the BBC?
You too.
All right, let's talk about something else.
You weren't expecting that.
Part of the story: don't mess with Elon Musk and don't send along a very junior reporter, because he will absolutely make mincemeat of you, as indeed he did. Now, as covered here before, the London boroughs of Harrow, Hillingdon, Bromley, Bexley and Surrey County Council as well have been attempting to take a legal action, a judicial review against Sadiq Khan's decision to extend the Eulers zone right out to the limits of Greater London. And I'm joined today by Colin Smith, the leader of Bromley Council, and I think we may have a little bit of progress.
We have, Nigel. Very, very good news indeed. The judge who's reviewed the case has agreed that 2 of the points we've raised are substantive and that he wants to take a closer look at them, and that he has granted us a judicial review which will go forward to be heard hopefully in July. So good news.
So 29th of August is when this change is due to come in. Something like 700,000 vehicles on the edges of Greater London that would not be compliant, and a judicial review basically assesses whether the law gives Khan and TfL the power to go above your head as the elected leader of Bromley Council. Is that really the nub of what this is about?
Yeah, absolutely, Nigel. The nub of this is the mayor believes he has the power to install his ULEZ across the entire 32 boroughs, effectively out to the M25. We believe that he's exceeded his powers under the 1999 Act. We also believe that he hasn't consulted around the perimeter in terms of the scheme for making good, replacing non-compliant vehicles in places like Kent and Surrey. So, yeah, today, great news. We're really encouraged. Now, obviously, we need to hone our arguments to ensure that we present them as well as possible to the judge.
You're not a lawyer, Colin Smith, but do you actually sincerely, and you've obviously taken legal advice on all of this, otherwise you wouldn't be doing it, do you genuinely, in your heart of hearts, believe there's a chance you can win this case?
Yes, we do. We've obviously hoped so. The judge, law, as you say, I'm no expert. My fellow leaders are no experts. But we have hired KC Advice, top KC Advice. He advises us that we've got a case, and it's a really viable case with prospects. So we fight, and we fight to win.
The Mayor's office had responded to this first legal hurdle being cleared. And they're not backing down one little inch. Indeed, they say this is all about saving lives. Indeed, they say that up to 4,000 people a year are dying because of traffic fumes in London. And that basically, Colin Smith, you don't really give a damn about the health of people in the capital.
Well, it's palpable nonsense, isn't it? We've established already that it doesn't cause 4,000 deaths. His use of the figures is frankly flaky. Bromley has an elderly population, which is why a lot of people die in Bromley compared to other places. He hasn't taken account of the fact that Bromley has the cleanest air in London, apart from Havering, marginally behind. He hasn't taken account of the number of care homes in boroughs. All in all, he hasn't even taken account of his own advice, which tells him even if he installs this scheme, it will make virtually zero difference to the quality of air in outer London, which is why the 4 boroughs plus Surrey are going to fight this as hard as we can all the way.
Tough one for you. If Khan was to win and these cameras were installed, and one of the objections I'm getting isn't just that it'll cost £12.50 for non-compliant cars or a nurse on night shift going over and back either side of midnight, 25 quid. Quite a strong feeling that it's a growth of the surveillance state, that it's all going a little bit too far, and people talking very openly about direct action. And we've seen direct action already against some of the early cameras that have been installed. You know, some putting cardboard boxes over them, others taking more extreme action. What would you say to those people who, if we get to the point where on the outskirts of Bromley Borough these cameras are installed and active from the 29th of August, what should they do?
Nigel, what I would say as an elected Democrat is I cannot condone violence to the cameras, damage to the cameras. Mr. Khan has been warned repeatedly that a lot of people are frightened, a lot of people are upset, they're angry about being ignored, they're angry because their jobs, their care networks, their very livelihoods are at risk. And unfortunately, we're seeing that manifest itself on the street. So no one wants to see that. And it's yet another reason why we would urge the Mayor, even at this late stage, to just take a look at the facts that this is a money-raising scam in preparation for the introducing of road price charging.
Absolutely.
And he needs to stop.
Absolutely. I talked about that last night. That's what they all really want to do. Colin Smith, thank you very much indeed, and well done on getting over this first hurdle. Now, on Saturday, I'm going to be in Aintree for the Grand National. I can't wait. Joining me in a moment is somebody who is an Animal Rising spokesman who wants to ruin my day. We'll have a debate.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope? It's very much so. And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's been going since the late 1830s, and 40 horses, a cavalry charge, head towards the first fence, and they run when it's nearly 4.5 miles. I'm guessing after all the rain this week, the going will be pretty heavy. It'll be pretty gruelling for all involved. But it is a massive annual global spectacle. It is the Grand National. It'll be watched by 500 million people around the world. I haven't been for years. I'm going this Saturday. I'm very, very excited about it, I must say. But a story broke in the Mail on Sunday a couple of weeks ago that there were attempts to disrupt it. People who are, I think, modern-day Puritans. That's all I can imagine they are, because they simply don't like the fact that tens of thousands of us are going to have a very, very good day and watch these amazing horses, these horses who are looked after in a way that I doubt any other animals on earth are. Well, I'm joined by Nathan McGovern, the Animal Rising spokesperson. I've not heard of Animal Rising. Is this a new outfit?
So yeah, on Monday we relaunched. Previously I spoke to you as a spokesperson for Animal Rebellion, and this Monday
that was veganism.
Animal Rising.
That was veganism we spoke about before.
Yes,
wasn't
it was.
So you think, to be clear about this, you think we shouldn't eat meat or fish or drink milk, and nor should we go to the Grand National?
Well, what I think we really need to do, Nigel, is to be looking at ways of loving animals that don't harm them. I'm actually really pleased that you say these horses are amazing, because they really are.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that a horse dies every other day in racing in this country. And, I think that's unacceptable.
Nathan, if it wasn't for horse racing, these horses wouldn't exist. They wouldn't actually be there. They are bred to race, and they come, as you know, from bloodlines, and they love it. They absolutely love it. They are fed the best. They've got the best vets, the best training. They have amazing lives. They love what they do. And yes, you're right. Not so much in flat racing, but in jump racing, one or two do get put down, and it's unpleasant, and it's horrible, and it's sad. But without racing, they wouldn't even be alive.
So, Nigel, what I think you raised there is a really important point, and I think it's actually quite sad that, a lot of people can't imagine these animals existing apart from our use for them, for horse racing. Whether we look at our food industry, a lot of people can't imagine, pigs or cows or sheep, in natural habitats apart from our use for them for food. And what we really need to do is reevaluate why that is. I've never seen a wild horse. I know there's a few down Dartmoor, Exmoor way, and it would be fantastic if we had wild horses, and we can enjoy that.
That may be true.
And we don't have to see them die on racetracks. You haven't been at the National for a few years, but I assume you watched it in 2019.
Yeah, I've seen it, and I've seen it.
And you saw the horse go over the first hurdle,
yeah, I've been
and you
saw
how it fell and broke its neck. You saw it writhing in pain on the floor. And I can see in your eyes right now that you hated seeing that.
No, we don't like it. But we know they're the risks of the sport, and equally, of course, for the jockeys as well, many of whom get very, very seriously hurt. But here's the point, Nathan McGovern. You and I have a different view on this, all right? I want to go for a good day. Your mob want to come along and disrupt the day. You don't even want me to have a bacon sandwich when I arrive at the track. You are a modern-day Cromwellian Puritan. What gives you the right? What gives you the right to impose the way you think the world should be on me? What moral authority do you have to do this?
Well, Nigel, there's plenty of fun ways to spend your Saturday and not watch horses die on a race course.
It's not for you to decide what I want to do.
You can go for a picnic, go for a walk. You might see a few animals in nature, and they wouldn't be ridden to death on the track.
Well, this is like, Cromwell said, sit at home and read the Bible. You are making a moral judgment that you know better than all the rest of it, and you want to impose that upon us through anarchistic action. That is the truth of it.
Well, what I think is important, the point is that the University of York, this was a study carried out a couple of years back. They've actually recognised that 80% of under 40s have no interest in going to the races for ethical reasons. And the vast majority of the people that do go to the races go for the good day out. Before I was vegan, before, my eyes were kind of open to a lot of this, I went to the races myself. I went up in Perth.
So what went wrong what went wrong with your life?
Well, what I looked at, I saw these beautiful animals on the track. And then I went away and looked at the stats, the statistics of what a horse dies every other day in racing, and thinking, we can have a world in which we appreciate and we love these animals without exploiting them.
If you ban racing, they'll all be shot.
We both know it's more complicated than that, Nigel.
They wouldn't even be alive.
I contest that. What we could see is we could see wild horses return. We could see these beautiful animals in habitats where they're not exploited.
You may have a few wild horses on the upland parts of our country, in most of the rest of the country, to have in leafy Surrey, to have untrained wild horses, you're talking nonsense. But look, you know what? This is GB News. We're here to debate all sides of an argument. If you mess up my Saturday, I'm going to be after you. That's all I can tell you. All right? Nathan, thank you for coming. And there we are. That's what we do. We allow people on this. This channel is genuinely about free, open debate, hopefully conducted with passion, but equally, conducted with a degree of civility, which I think is very, very important. Now, your barrage the Farages, this idea that you send me in videos and we play the video and I answer it. The producers choose the questions. I'm not told what they are. So let's give it a whirl and let's see what Stuart has got for me today.
Hello, Nigel. My name's Stuart and I'm from Nottingham. I just wanted one question to you. How would you solve all the strikes if you was Prime Minister?
I couldn't hear that. Sorry. How would I solve what? Oh, all the strikes. Right, well, I tell you what, Stuart, this is a difficult one, but what you cannot give in to left-wing intimidation and bullying. Of course, living in inflationary times, people want reasonable pay increases. But the idea that you come along and say, we've had nothing really for the last 10 years, we now need 35%, as the junior doctors are saying, is simply ludicrous. They may not be highly paid, but boy, they're doing an apprenticeship, after which they will get very highly paid, and indeed many of them now, of course, are going off to Australia, where they get paid double what a doctor gets paid in this country. Let's go to Anna and see what her barrage the Farage is.
Hello, Nigel. My name's Anna, and I've always been interested in why the media don't seem to represent the majority of people anymore.
Ah, Anna, it's easy. It's the London bubble. Yes, they're all here within a sort of couple of square miles of where we are, and they all go to the same universities and they all mix in the same social groups. None of them seem to have any hobbies, any interest at all outside of politics and current affairs. Yes, it's, the week in Westminster, the weekends in Oxfordshire, or whatever it is. They marry each other's sisters. I mean, it is remarkable. It is remarkable how, through media, politics, and indeed the civil service, the public sector, remarkable how close these people are. And they reinforce their own opinions on things like wind farms and net zero and the benefits of open border migration and so much else. They are a very, very narrow little clique. But they have huge influence throughout the media, huge influence throughout what people hear. It's one of the reasons we're here at GB News, is to make sure we can have a proper counter-argument. But as I said, with Nathan, who wants to ruin my day at the Grand National, we'll have passionate debate, we'll talk about everything, nothing is off the table, but we'll attempt to do it with civility. Well, one man who is known for his civility is, of course, Jacob Rees-Mogg. Jacob, fascinating conversation I had there with Sue Reed. There's a French naval vessel telling a P&O ferry, get out of the way. £500 million we're giving them, and they're still escorting them over the channel. You're covering this tonight.
You're stealing my monologue. This is what I'm going to be talking about. I can't believe that we're giving £500 million, and they are taking boats from French waters and escorting them into UK waters. I thought the whole point of giving them money was that they would stop them coming. I just think this is outrageous. And to your correspondent, this is about the blob, isn't it? Thinking that this is all fine, let's give them lots of money and let's not demand the quid pro quo. So that's going to be opening up my programme.
Is Rishi going to stop the boats?
Well, it's putting the legislation in the right place, and then ultimately it's challenging the European Convention on Human Rights. That has been the stumbling block for years, and unless we're willing to disagree with them or disapply parts of it, it's going to be really hard to stop the small boats coming.
I sense it's the next gigantic political battle in British politics that'll play out over the next few years.
Well, I think there are two. That's one, and the other one is making everyone's life miserable by turning our lights out. Something you think and talk about often.
No, I agree often. Well, we're done for time, but we now must find out, how is Storm Noah affecting us? It's even worse than the normal April showers.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest broadcast from the Met Office. It is gradually going to turn calmer over the course of the next few days into the weekend, but still some strong winds and heavy rain there over the next 24 hours as Storm Noah slowly eases and moves away. Another system moves across southern areas on Friday, but then into the weekend we should see a ridge of high pressure starting to build, allowing it to get warmer and less windy too. So out there, it is a windy evening to come. Outbreaks of showery rain, heavy at times, some snow over the high ground across northern England and Scotland too. Showers easing overnight, some clearer spells developing. Staying quite blustery though, allowing temperatures to hold up above freezing, but still on the chilly side, 2 or 3 degrees to start Thursday morning. And a mixed start, cloudy across the northern half of the UK, showery outbreaks of rain, some sunshine in the south, but as we move through the day, it'll be a case of April showers, sunny spells, and some of the showers will be heavy at times, some hail and thunder. Staying blustery, but the wind's not as strong compared to recent days, but a cold feeling day, only highs of around 12 or 13 across the southeast, single figures across the north. Into Thursday evening, showers continue, though they tend to lose their intensity, and we'll continue to see some clear spells. Cloud thickening though during the early hours across the far southwest as that next weather system approaches. Under the clearer skies, it will turn quite chilly once again to start Friday morning. Temperatures low single figures, perhaps a touch of grass frost for 1 or 2. As we go through the day on Friday, we'll see southern parts of the UK turning increasingly cloudy. We'll see some showery outbreaks of rain pushing east. Brighter further north, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, seeing a mixture of sunny spells and showers. Showers not quite as heavy as recent days and temperatures a little higher. But the good news is, into the weekend, it should become largely dry and the temperatures starting to rise, perhaps as high as 17 or 18 come Sunday.
It's all about family, being in people's It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.